You're listening to the Happiest Lives podcast with Jill Lillard, episode 160.
Welcome to the Happiest Lives podcast, where you'll learn to think better, feel better, and become the woman God says you already are. Here's your host, Jill Lillard.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Happiest Lives podcast. Today, we're beginning a new series. I have worked with different couples, different backgrounds, different issues on the surface, but after 25 years of sitting with people in my office, I keep noticing the same thing underneath. It's the same shape, the same dance, the same fight, wearing different clothes. So that's what this series is called, Why You Keep Having the Same Fight. And the whole thing is built around one idea. When you can understand the pattern underneath your conflict, you can change the cycle. And when the cycle changes, something in your relationship gets to move forward in a way that it hasn't been able to before. So that's where we're headed. Let's start today by naming what we're actually dealing with. I want to start with a couple. I have changed their names, but it's a couple like many couples that I work with, and I'm going to call them Mark and Christy. So Mark and Christy have been married about 15 years. They have 2 kids. They run a business together, which means they are together constantly and also almost never actually with each other. You'll understand that if you've ever worked with your spouse. They came into my office, and within 8 minutes, I could see it. They loved each other. That was very obvious. They were doing a lot of things well. However, they had a cycle, and the cycle had been running long enough that they'd stopped expecting anything different. Here's how a typical conversation went for them. Christy would bring something up. Maybe it was money. That's usually what it was. Or how they were handling something with one of the kids. And she'd bring it up very carefully because she learned over the years that how she said it mattered. She'd tried to be calm. She tried to be reasonable. But somewhere in the first 2 minutes, something would shift in the room. Mark would get really quiet, or he'd give her a one-word answer, or he'd pull out his phone. And Christy would feel it, that thing where you can tell the other person has left the building, even though they're still standing there right in front of you. So she would push a little bit more. She needed to know that he had heard her. However, the more she pushed, the more quiet Mark would get. The more quiet he became, the more she pushed, until eventually one of them would say something sharp, or they'd both just silently agree to stop. And they'd go to sleep that night with the thing still sitting there between them, unresolved. Both of them a little lonelier than when they woke up that morning. What struck me about Mark and Christy, and I've sat with so many versions of them, wasn't that they were fighting. It was that neither of them was trying to hurt the other. Both wanted connection. They both wanted to feel heard. They both wanted to feel like they were on the same team. But the ways they were reaching for those things were accidentally triggering the other person's defenses. And so the cycle just kept running. And here's a thing that really took me a while to understand, and that I think is the most important reframe in this whole series. The topic, what you guys are talking about, is almost never the real problem. So I want to say that again. The topic, the money, the kids, the in-laws, the dishes, the topic is almost never the real problem. The topic is the occasion. It's the doorway through which the deeper issue enters the room. Because underneath most reoccurring arguments are questions that sound more like this. Do I matter to you? Can I trust you? Are you with me? Am I safe here? Those are the questions people are asking long before anyone starts debating schedules or finances. And when those questions don't feel answered, you get caught in a loop. One person pursues, the other one withdraws. One person criticizes, the other person defends. One person escalates, and the other shuts down. So the topic changes, but the cycle remains the same. And over time, the cycle itself becomes the problem. The cycle is what keeps you both stuck. So maybe you've been trying to fix the doorway when the issue is really what is walking through it. Now, I want to stay here for just a minute because I think most conversations about conflict only describe one version of it. And if your relationship doesn't look like that version, you might assume this doesn't apply to you. When most people picture relationship conflict, they picture a loud version. Voices are raised, someone sleeping on the couch. And that is a very real version. Believe me, I've seen that many times. And some of you know exactly what I mean. But there is this quieter version. And I want to spend some time there. This quieter version looks like this. Nobody's yelling. Nobody's slamming anything. So on the outside, everything looks picture perfect. But there's a subject you don't really touch anymore. There's a moment every few weeks where you start to bring something up, and then you just don't. You swallow it because you know how it'll go, or you don't have the energy, or frankly, somewhere along the way, you stop believing it would make a difference. So this quiet version looks like two people who are very polite to each other. They function well, they raise their kids, run their lives, and maybe even laugh together sometimes. But this couple has drifted in kind of a managed distance where the real things, what you actually feel, what you actually need, what you're actually afraid of, those things live just slightly out of reach. So this is a cycle too. It's just a quieter one. And quiet doesn't mean healthy. Sometimes quiet means resentment has gone underground where it's harder to see and a lot harder to get to. So whether your version is loud and demonstrative or very subtle and quiet, whether you chase the conversation or you shut it down, whether the conflict in your home is combustible or sort of airless, this series is for you. You're on the right podcast, sister. Let me describe the cycle a little more precisely because this is the place that makes everything else we'll do in this series make sense. So every reoccurring cycle has the same basic structure. Someone brings up a concern and the other person hears it, consciously or not, as criticism or as an accusation or as an overwhelming problem they can't solve. Something in their nervous system activates. Defensiveness rises or they shut down. Now, the first person doesn't feel heard, so they either escalate or they retreat. Nobody gets what they came for. The conversation ends without a resolution, and the underlying issue hasn't moved an inch. Both people have a need to feel heard or valued or safe or close, and they've developed ways of reaching for that need that accidentally triggers the other person's defenses. So Christy doesn't bring up the money because she wants a fight. She brings it up because she needs to feel like she and Mark are a team. What she's really reaching for is closeness. But the way it lands for Mark, it lands like she doesn't trust him and she thinks he's failing. And the moment he feels that, even if it's not what she meant, he goes quiet because going quiet is how he protects both of them from something worse. Two people, both trying, both failing to land. That's the cycle. And here's what I want you to hear. Neither of them is the enemy. The cycle is the enemy. And that's the shift from you're the problem to the cycle is the problem. That is often the beginning of something actually changing. But here's another shift that has to happen too. One of the things I've learned over the years is that when people first discover the cycle, they often become experts on their spouse's half. They can tell me exactly where their husband shuts down, exactly where their wife becomes critical, exactly how the other person keeps the dance going. And sometimes they're right, but insight only becomes useful when it's turned inward. The question isn't just, can I see the cycle? The question is, can I see my part in it? Because my part is the only part I can actually work on. Both people contribute to a cycle. Both people are hurting inside. Both people have reasons they respond the way they do. But I only have access to one person in the relationship, which is me. I can't reach into someone else's nervous system and calm it down. I can't make someone communicate differently. I can't force someone to hear me. What I can do is become aware of how I move in the dance. And here's what's really fascinating. When one person changes how they move, the cycle has to reorganize. It can't keep running exactly the same way. The dance requires both people doing their parts. When one person begins moving differently, something shifts. Now, it's not always overnight and it's not perfect, but it does shift. And that's why this series is really about your half of the cycle. Your half is the only half you've been entrusted to steward, and that's enough to begin creating change. Okay, here's where I want to bring something that sits underneath all of this. Psalms 139 ends with this: "Search me, God, know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." That is not a passive prayer. That is an invitation. David is saying, I want to see myself clearly. Even the parts I'd rather not see, even the parts I'd convince myself are someone else's fault. I know for myself, it's easy for me to look at my husband and see his flaws, see ways that he can improve, things that he could do differently. It's, I guess, easier to see someone outside of you. We see it very clearly, but it's really hard to look at ourselves. And I just wonder if I could see myself maybe the way he sees me. What is it that he sees that I might be missing? And can I receive that as valid? Or will my defenses go up? Will I justify myself? Because that's usually what we do as humans. So that's the posture of this entire series. We're going to search me. We're going to bring our own half of the cycle into the light. And that is enough to start something. So here's my invitation before we go into the next episode next week. I want you to pick one relationship. Maybe it is your marriage. Maybe it's a relationship with your mom. Maybe a friendship that's been fraying. There's a conversation you keep having. The topic changes, but the feeling is the same. Same temperature, same ending, and it's the same aftermath every single time. I want you to notice the dance you're doing. Not the content, not the words, not who said what, the dance, the movement, who comes forward and who goes back, who gets louder and who goes quiet, who reaches and who disappears. What does it look like right before someone shuts down or says something they regret, or you both just silently agree to stop? That's your dance. That's your cycle. And I want to tell you, I know this dance from the inside. My husband and I get caught in it too. There's one we do where I bring something up and somewhere in the delivery, it lands as criticism and he gets quiet or defensive and I can feel the gap opening up. So I say it again, louder, sharper, trying to get a different response, trying to get him to come back. And of course, that just widens the gap. And there's another one we do where I get so flooded in the middle of a hard conversation that my brain just stops working. A few weeks ago, we were in it. I could feel myself getting more and more activated, less and less able to actually hear him. And I finally just said, can we please take a pause? Not, I'm done talking about this, not we're dropping it, just my nervous system is not okay right now, and I need a few minutes before I can actually listen. So I noticed the dance and I introduced a pause. That's it. That's the whole move for this week. I'm not asking you to fix anything or change anything, but I want you to start seeing it, start recognizing what's happening, because you cannot interrupt a dance you don't know that you're doing. So before I close, I want to say something to the woman who came into this episode carrying a lot of weight. You've been in the same fight for years, maybe decades. You're tired of it. Maybe you tried things that didn't work and you're not entirely sure why you're listening to another podcast about it. I hear you. So the fact that you're still stuck in that cycle just means that you've been trying to solve a cycle problem with a topic solution. You've been trying to win arguments that were never actually about the argument. You've been trying to get someone to hear you without having the tools to say the thing that's actually true underneath the thing that you've been saying. So all of that is information. That is all information that you can learn from, what's working, what's not working. Maybe you just haven't seen the cycle clearly yet. The gospel is about something broken being made new. There is grace for the cycles we've been stuck in. There is a God who is not surprised by any of it. And there is a path forward. So next week, we're going to talk about what happens in your body when a conversation goes sideways, why your thinking brain goes offline, why you suddenly can't access any of the good intentions you came with, and what to do about it. It has a name. It's called flooding. And once you understand it, you will not look at a hard conversation the same way again. We're going to walk this together. I'll see you in the next episode. If you want to take this work and apply it, go to myhappyvault.com. That's where I share free resources and ways to stay connected. I'll talk to you next time.